Okay, so we're now going to move on to explore thinking and feeling. And what I'm going to do with you first of all is to talk through the facets, and then we'll look at your profile on the thinking and feeling preference. So if you remember from doing step one, thinking and feeling is about how you make your decisions. It's not about how good they are, it's about the process that you use when you're decision making.
Yeah.
So we're now going to look at the facets that make up thinking and feeling. And if you remember from doing your step one, this is about the process you use in order to make a decision. It's not about how good that decision is.
Yeah.
So whether you tend to make your decision using your logic or whether you tend to make your decision based on values. So whether you use your head or your heart. Okay. And the first facet is a logical and empathetic. And this is about when you're making a decision, maybe around your team, do you step outside of the team in order to make that decision logically and objectively, or do you tend to step into the team and think about the individuals concerned? And this is where you start making your decision. When I start making my decision-making process, do I detach myself, or do I, in order to be objective, or do I step in order to understand the individuals? What would I ideally like to do? And then the second facet, reasonable and compassionate, is about how do you actually make your decisions. So when you've stepped out or stepped in, how do you make your decisions from that point? Do you use your head or your heart?
Okay.
So those two facets are very clear about decision making. The other three facets about how you might engage with somebody through the decision making or problem solving process. So how do you treat people, how do you work with people in that process? So the third facet is about questioning and accommodating. So when you see difference, or where somebody's presenting you with an idea, are you likely to question it, challenge it, find out more information? Or are you more concerned about the relationship with somebody and therefore may choose perhaps to ask questions in a less directive way? So it may be, I notice, I'm curious about, rather than directly saying, why do that? What's going on? Is this making sense?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
The next facet is about critical and accepting, and it's our general outlook on difference. So typically somebody with a thinking preference tends to pick up what's wrong with something. So if they're presented with an idea, they're likely to find out or explore where that idea isn't going to work, and therefore what you might need to do in order to improve it.
Yeah.
Somebody who is feeling is more likely to be accepting, so they are likely to look for what's right. So let's find out what's good about this idea and then build on it. And this,
okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this may come out when people are giving feedback. So when we did your step one, we were talking about feedback and how to give feedback and the type of feedback that people typically preferred. People who are thinking and critical will often look for what can be improved. So where's the development opportunity? What can we do better? And they may then look at what's going right, but the focus, or the initial focus, is on what can be done better. Somebody who's feeling and accepting, their initial focus is going to be on what's right. What's this person doing well? And then may look to what could they do better.
Okay.
Yep. And then the final facet is tough tender. And this is about, once a decision's made, what do you do? Do you stand by that decision and drive it through? Or are you more concerned about getting people's buy-in and encouraging people, persuading them to go with the decision?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Are they all clear?
Yes, they're very clear.
Brilliant. In that case, I'm now going to share with you how you've answered the questionnaire.
Okay.
So, if you remember from when we did the initial discussion, that if your purple bar is in the blue, it means that behaviour is that facet's in preference.
In preference, yeah.
And if it's in the yellow, it's out of preference. So this is how you've scored on thinking and feeling.
Ah. Well, that's quite interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not what I was expecting at all.
Okay.
Okay, I was expecting them to be all, well, pretty much, I would have said, all on this side.
Okay.
So I think we need to explore why
Yeah. This is
this
why.
has come up.
Okay, so if you notice, thinking is emboldened there,
Yes.
is highlighted, which means that your reported type was thinking.
Yes.
So you've already shared ESTJ, clear about ESTJ, and the report has come back and confirming ESTJ.
Yeah.
And your preference scores, if we just flick to the end, it will tell us your preference score on thinking was 13. So a moderate preference. So when you answered the questionnaire, the step 1 questions, the questionnaire was fairly sure that you had a thinking preference because you answered the questions, the majority of the questions, as somebody with a thinking preference.
Yes.
Okay. Now, step 2 contains step 1 questions and step 2 questions. And you've answered the step 1 questions, as we've said, with thinking preference, but a lot of the step 2 questions you've answered with a more feeling perspective.
Yes.
So your behaviour is more feeling. Would an analogy help?
Yes, it would,
Okay.
actually.
So step 1 is a bit like saying to you, are you left-handed or right-handed?
Mm-hmm.
And you've said to me,
Right-handed.
I'm right-handed. And then step 2 is saying to you, okay, which hand do you throw a ball with? What hand do you catch with? Which hand do you hold a fork with? Which hand do you write with? So it's asking for the behaviours
Yes.
that may be different from your underlying preference.
Yes.
So if we continue the analogy, you'd be saying, I'm right-handed, but I throw a ball with my left hand, I catch a ball with my left hand, I write with my
Sometimes
left
use a
hand.
fork with my left hand. Yeah, exactly.
That's it. And so
Yeah.
people are, oh, that's a bit unusual.
Yeah,
Because I would expect
Okay.
you to do everything with your right hand.
yeah.
But it's giving an understanding of you as an individual on where you might not fit the ESTJ profile. Should we have a look?
Very
a bit-
interesting.
Yeah.
Let's look further.
Let's have a look. So, if we try and make sense of this, should we start with the top 2?
Yes.
So, if I'm looking at it just from what's on the page, what this would suggest to me is somebody who is clear in their thinking preference, they're logical, they're objective, they're able to see things from as an objective standpoint.
Yes.
However, they've either learnt or it's come naturally to them or it's integral to who they are to actually consider other people and how decisions will impact on others. I see you're nodding.
Yeah. Riley
I'll shut up and let you
nodding.
Okay, do you want to?
Yes, well, I mean, I can now see that's exactly what's happened. And as I mentioned before, that I have had to learn this. So
Okay.
although which is why I'm surprised by this, because I would have expected, the compassionate definitely to have been much more on the reasonable side. But I am much more compassionate in my dealings with the team especially, because I've had to learn to be.
Okay.
It doesn't come naturally, but I have consciously learned to be. So that probably is why in the step 2 it's come up here.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's have a think, because when we were talking about sensing and intuition, and you were talking about your days at university, and you were talking about how you did a lot of support work for other people, how you were interested in the counselling side of things. Do you see where that may?
Well, I can see where that comes in now.
Yeah, yes.
And then, yes, I mean, at university I was very involved in all sorts of different societies and clubs, and I was seen to be someone that was, dare I say, liked and trusted and pretty easy to get on with and open. So I can see that is now linking up there.
And the liked and trusted may come from other places, not just your MBTI profile, but this compassionate is that being able to be objective, but then to understand how things are impacting on other people.
On others.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. That I've definitely had to learn.
Yeah.
Because my instinct is to drive a project forward and through.
Sure.
And with my idea generally being the one that ought to be taken. So I have had to learn to listen.
Yeah. Shall we explore the other three?
Yes,
'Cause that seems to make sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the questioning and accommodating, this is suggesting that you'll choose whether it's appropriate to question or not to question. So you this again may be learnt or it may be instinctive in you, but it's suggesting that if somebody presents you with an idea, if you're in a meeting listening to people, you will choose whether it's appropriate or not to question. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
So if it's something really important to you, you're more likely to question. If it's less important, you may consider the relationship and the impact on the relationship if you challenge that individual.
Yes, yes, but only if it's less important.
Yeah, sure.
If it's important, then not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this out of preference again on the accepting is a 5 out of preference, which may suggest that it's characteristic of you. So somebody who is thinking, we talked earlier about will often look for what's wrong, is suggesting that you'll look for what's right.
And I think that's right, especially to do with the direct reports.
Yeah,
to me.
absolutely,
I think
yes.
that again it's something I've had to learn, or maybe not. I mean, maybe it is always there, or was always there, and it's taken the MBTI to sort of point it out.
Perhaps realise, yeah.
But I very much will look for the good in someone
So
who's
if
reporting to me.
I was going to say, if I was working in your team,
Yeah.
what would that experience be like for me?
Well, I hope it would be a very good experience, because I hope that you would feel very much a part of the team, and that I would listen to you,
Sure.
and that I would be able to very quickly see your best qualities and what you bring to the team.
Yeah.
And so that you feel that those are being listened to and utilised and brought in to play when necessary. So I hope you'd find it a great experience.
I'm sure I would. And the final facet, which is also out of preference, is about tough tender. And if you remember, this one is about once a decision's made, go on and do it. Business focus, bottom line, let's drive it forward. Actually, let me persuade you, let me help you understand that decision. Let me bring you with me.
Well, that's something, again, is where traditionally I would have always imagined myself to have been on the tough side of things.
Yeah.
But through learning about having to, or wanting to take others'
Sure.
opinions into consideration, and actually that's how you get the best from a team, and it's the individual versus the team thing that works here.
Yeah.
So that one is less surprising than the compassionate or the accepting on first glance.
Yeah, yes. And one of the things with the step 2 feedback, there's the kind of first glance reaction, but then it's actually reflecting and thinking through that things may, when you actually explore them in more depth.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I can now begin to see that. But it was a shock.
You've talked about if I was working for you, the experience that might be in terms of my development and recognising what I was good at and encouraging me. What I'm curious about is what happens when you're stressed. So when the pressure builds, when there's deadlines, when everything's crumbling around us, what am I likely to see in you?
I will then more likely revert to an original type, I would say.
Okay.
So I'll be much more likely to drive something forward myself and then maybe seen as not taking everybody else's ideas and views into consideration simply for the need of getting something done.
Yeah.
When under a lot of stress,
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah. So would I still feel listened to?
Probably not. And it wouldn't be until later that I would recognise that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's something I've got to work on, obviously.
Sure. Sure. And from what you said earlier, the you've learned over the years to deal with the stress. So maybe I wouldn't see it quite as much, but it's useful very much to be aware of.
Yes.
Because it's going from somebody who's supporting, listening, seeing my good side, to, as you've said,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't happen very often, no. But it does, it can happen.
Yes.